Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. I believe I know who Sean O'Malley's next opponent will be. It's just a rumor as of right now, but it kind of makes sense. Everything seems to be fitting together. So I figured I'd make a video about it. First off, let's talk about this whole entire Sean O'Malley situation because he originally had a fight scheduled in July at UFC 264 on the Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 3 card. He was supposed to fight Luis Smoka, and I wasn't too crazy about that matchup to begin with. And then Luis Smoka pulled out about a week before the fight, and the UFC went and found a replacement opponent who wasn't even signed to the UFC. They found Chris Montano to step in on short notice to fight Sean O'Malley. And regardless of how the fight went, basically Sean O'Malley dominated him on the feet. But Chris Montano is super tough and durable, just walking through hard shots like an absolute zombie. Eventually, the fight was stopped. It was a weird stoppage, but Sean O'Malley got the win. And because of Sean O'Malley's fan base, he has a cult-like following immediately after the fight. And this happens with a lot of fighters. Who is Sean O'Malley going to fight next? And originally, we thought we knew. And the original rumor, and I believe this to be true, this was going to happen, but circumstances and stuff came in the way. Sean O'Malley was going to fight Frankie Edgar at UFC 268 at Madison Square Garden in November. But Sean O'Malley did not want to fight on UFC 268. He did not want to fight in New York. The time frame didn't work for him. He said, I don't want to fight on that card. So unfortunately, he lost that fight against Frankie Edgar, which is super, unfortunate for him because Frankie Edgar is the most beatable bantamweight in the top 10 of the division. Bantamweight is just stacked. It's just nothing but absolute killers. Even through the top 15 and even outside the top 15, there's a lot of great prospects outside of the top 15 of the bantamweight division. So he missed this chance against a beatable Frankie Edgar. Don't get me wrong, Frankie Edgar is still a quality opponent. But if you look at the top 10, if you had to pick one that Sean O'Malley can probably beat, you're probably going to hone in on Frankie Edgar. So Sean O'Malley not only loses that fight, he loses it to Marlon Vera. Now Marlon Vera's taking on Frankie Edgar next at MSG and UFC 268 in November. So the question has become, who is Sean O'Malley going to fight next? And for me personally, and if you guys follow the channel, you've heard me say this plenty of times, I want to see Sean O'Malley tested against a quality opponent. He has some great wins. He looks promising. He looks impressive. But, the quality of names that he's fought are just not the greatest. You had Eddie Wineland, you had Thomas Almeida, just not the greatest. And Sean O'Malley has kind of talked about that a little bit. And he said, look, I want to work out my contract with the UFC. And, I want to renegotiate before I start fighting some top 10 killers at bantamweight. And I kind of agree with Sean O'Malley a little bit. He is a draw. He is popular. He probably deserves to get paid more. But at the same time, when you haven't beaten anyone yet, you really don't have the leverage to strong arm the UFC. But I guess he has the popularity. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. He said, you know what? If the UFC doesn't want to pay me more, I'll just fight out of my contract. And I'll just fight, people who aren't even ranked at this point in time. Easier fights, paycheck. I get it. I totally get it. This is kind of where I'm on the side of Sean O'Malley. I understand, he wants to get paid more because people, tune in to watch him fight. But again, I don't know if this is the right way to go because if you go out there and you start a top 10 guy, the UFC is forced to pay you more. Your hype is already crazy and you haven't even beat anyone yet. If you beat a top 10 guy, Sean O'Malley's hype will go through the roof. I honestly believe even if he went out there and beat Frankie Edgar, I think people will be calling for Sean O'Malley to get a title shot. That's how big I believe he would blow up. I think Sean O'Malley, if he can continue to win, he can be one of the biggest stars in the UFC. So, it looks like he's not going to fight someone ranked. I don't know. I hope he still does. But the rumored fight that's going to happen now, and when I think it's going to happen, is UFC 269, December 11th. That's the same card. It looks like Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira is going to happen, as well as Devison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno 3. And I think Sean O'Malley is going to fight Brian Boom Kelleher. He called him out after his last fight against Domingo Pilarde in August on the Kelvin Gastelum card versus Cannonier. And he said, you know what? You don't want to fight a ranked opponent? Well, I'm not ranked, so that's perfect. And today I'm going to show you the tweet. Brian Kelleher tweeted out something that alluded to that basically he got word that Sean O'Malley accepted the fight. And again, this is all speculation and rumored right now. We have some evidence that this fight can potentially happen, but we do not know for 100% certainty. But Brian Boom Kelleher tweeted out, she said yes, and posted a picture of himself and Sean O'Malley. Now, I think this fight is likely to happen just because Sean O'Malley says, I don't want to fight a ranked guy. Kelleher, has been really campaigning for it, and the UFC loves these type of storylines where guys are going back and forth. So I think it'll probably happen on UFC 269. Again, it's not 100% guaranteed, but just looking at the evidence, it looks like it's going to happen. Now, who would I like to see Sean O'Malley fight next? Because that is another question. And right now, with the landscape of the bantamweight division, for my personal preference, I would like to see him fight Dominic Cruz. That's the matchup that I would prefer. But if he beats Kelleher, it really doesn't say anything. He cashes another paycheck, and that's really it. Until he fights a ranked guy, it's really hard to gauge just really how good Sean O'Malley is, just because the level of competition he's fighting isn't that great. And for Kelleher, if he fights Sean O'Malley, he can get a win. That would be absolutely insane, just because, Sean O'Malley has a massive name. So if Kelleher can get a win over him on a big card like UFC 269, and that fight's going to get a lot of publicity, he could blow his name up. Maybe it's not as big as Sean O'Malley currently is, but it could get pretty big just based off a win. Marlon Vera, we've seen him, he didn't really blow up, but he gets a lot more attention ever since he kicked Sean O'Malley's legs to death, had him stretchered out of the cage after he flash KO'd him. And, Marlon Vera is now getting a big fight with Frankie Edgar. So a win over Sean O'Malley means something. So, guys, let me know what you think of this potential matchups in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching so much. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.